Richard on in a short. So, in the meantime, how about a little more? Well, we are ready to rumble the issues and to help you unfold the issues that you cannot. And of course, with us today, like I said, Mickela Panday, our co-host, and Richard Noray. Of course, I'm the technician on the inside, all right? So let me say hi and good afternoon to Richard and, of course, Mickela.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you guys?
I'm okay.
It seems like just yesterday I was on and a week has gone so fast.
Nice to have you back. It's always nice to have you on our set here at Power to Digital. Very nice to have
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. How have things been with you otherwise? Are you
Well,
planning for the Easter?
I've been cooking in the hot sun.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, blazing sun. But I plan to take it all quite quiet and thing, I'm not taking chances of bundling up too much with the hanging out thing there. So I'm taking it
Yeah, now that the restrictions have sort of been relaxed, I think everybody has to be a little bit more cautious.
Yes, we have to.
So did everything work out? Were you able to, with your great expertise, put or three statements? Was it statements or remember we were talking about this last week?
Yes. I had asked the guys at production to put it together for me. I'm to check with them to see if they're through.
Yes, because I didn't hear from you. I was wondering if you forgot me.
No, I didn't forget you. But, the production department, they're quite busy.
Of course, there's a lot happening. There's a lot happening.
Yes. But I promise to have it done for you.
And I know that you will keep that promise. I know that you will. So, Rich, how is Rich today? We're not hearing him.
He's there. I've seen him.
Mickela, how are you?
I am good. How are you?
Quite well. Daddy Mac has been working on getting the production out. He knows that our word is our bond.
Yes.
And we have to put it out and it will be done. I'm saddened that it isn't done, given that you are here again today.
Yes.
It should have been here for you to get a, piece of it yourself, to hear how, it was done, when it was done. But the next time you come on and way ahead of that, you're going to hear it.
That's right. I promise.
We have a superstar in that department.
Great. I am looking forward. I know things can become very, very hectic.
Yes.
Especially when you have these live programs that go on, so many different things have to be put in place beforehand. So not a problem at all, but I am looking forward to next week for sure.
Yes, for sure. I guarantee you that.
Wonderful.
Richie. Richard? Okay. Hold on, Mickela. He'll come back on in a while. Sometime.
Yeah, sure, no problem. I understand.
Yeah.
Good, he's back.
You're going to get some internet fluctuations. I head into a place where I'll be able to put on the laptop. I'm still on the move.
Oh, okay.
So that will clear up shortly. But I was saying to Mickela, if I'm still on, if she hearing me.
Yes, I can hear you perfectly.
Right. The people whom we have working on it, Ruben and Gonzo and Kerry and Daddy Mac overseeing the whole exercise. You're going to hear it. I'm saddened that it isn't here at this time, so you'd have been able to hear it, now. We could have run it for you. But before you come back, you're going to hear it on a number of occasions, and when you do, we'd run it a few times there.
That sounds great. I have all faith in the technocrats. They know their job.
Oh, yes. And one or two won't put it out unless they feel you're not comfortable that the production is a professional one.
Of course. No, it's just very exciting. So, and I'm sure we'll have a great show. Lots to talk about today. Looking forward to that as well.
Right, so let's head in there.
Yes. Where would you like to begin?
Now, tell me. Mickela, I know in your party, you tend to look...
I'm listening.
Forward, I know, I should say, you're not going to take them on. you are looking to the future, and only, but at $1 as a single figure was spent on the spyware we looked at this week. Was that too much money to try to catch a few criminals?
Sorry, you broke up there. Was it too much money?
Yeah, to put out, to spend for some software, where they call it software programming or the software system.
Yeah.
Was that too much money that we are being told the way we could measure it is that we're going to catch a few criminals who may be communicating via cell phones? I was told yesterday it goes beyond that. It also encompasses, people who may be in white collar crimes. You may be able to intercept their conversation and also, so naturally it would work that way too. But was that money too much? What about crime prevention? Would it have been a better spend to put it behind, how I should say, programs that could assist people to pursue a different career in life and therefore a path away from criminality?
You can only judge, Rich, whether it was money well spent when you're able to see the statistics afterwards. You can't really judge it beforehand, but going into a bit deeper into what you were saying, I agree with you to the extent that crime is simply not about detection. It is also extremely multifaceted. And therefore, we must look at prevention, we must look at detection, and something a lot of people don't speak about. We must look at rehabilitation as well. So I think it is quite a bit of money. However, I would like to see the statistics. I don't know how they decide how money is going to be spent on national security because there is so much to do. Crime has not seemed to decrease or abated in any way. In fact, it feels at least as an average citizen as if it's increasing. But we can only tell. I for one, don't want them to fail. I would like them to be able to catch criminals. I hope they have planned how to do this. I think it has been tried before, and the statistics don't show that too much came to fruition from that. But I'd like to see, I genuinely like to see, okay, so we have to also look at, so you find someone or you were able to intercept a conversation and okay. But they also need to look at the whole justice system. What happens after that? There is already so much backlog. What's going to happen with these cases? There seems to be not enough magistrates. This is something that's discussed all the time. So again, going back to the fact that crime cannot simply be, we intercept, solving crime, cannot simply be that we intercept, detect who these criminals are, and then the whole procedure of arrest and charge beforehand. So I'd like to see, I can only hope as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago that they have a plan, a holistic plan in place and not simply we're going to intercept phone calls. I think it's going to take a lot more than that. I don't know what you think. What do you think?
My thinking about it, Mickela, is if this system that they have bought for 1.6 billion, truly, if it was between 20 and 40 million, I could say, okay, all right, we give that a shot, whatever we could get from it, we would accept. But when we look at the system, when we look at the situation, and we are seeing the extent of the expenditure for this thing, and what $1.6 billion could do for so many people. Let us assume we measure this, and in the context of it results in saving or catching 20 criminals, as opposed to if you were to put that money behind new programs, assisting people, helping some people to start new businesses and so on, which would run the multiplier effect because they get employment, they have money, they have disposable income, they start to spend, it impacts positively different sectors, the servicing sector, whatever other sector, all taxi drivers, they're all going to benefit the more people end up with employment. That $1.6 billion injection into the economy in such a way would have been so much more materially meaningful to the people of the country when compared to the fact that potentially you may only catch about 10 or 20 persons after this thing is launched. And I mean, 20 persons compared to hundreds, perhaps tens of thousands of people who could benefit if they had used that money differently. I mean, it's like chalk and cheese, as they say. So I'm not at all in agreement with that expenditure. I am willing to go all the way up to $50 million for it. I think part of it was relevant. But when you hear that kind of figure, I think you should have flipped and put that money into preventative measures instead of looking to catch criminals or to detect crime. I don't know. It has rubbed me the wrong way, and therefore it's quite discomforting.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, the discomforting factor is the price. The intention of the government is a good one, because the number one responsibility of any government is to protect the people of the country. But the protection is not only responding to crime, which means after the crime has happened, they try to put something in place to find out who committed it or who did it. Security also means job security. It also means helping families to become independent. It also means helping more people with their self-development processes, so that they themselves would have the skills and the tools to apply it in different sectors of the economy to help propel our economy forward. We can't just keep on spending billion upon billions to catch criminals, and on an annual basis, the numbers of people caught, they're not too high. And when they go to court, more than half get away. It just doesn't make sense. It's a bad spend. Nice to me.
I agree with you. I mean, $1.6 billion in a country, 1.4 million people, that would have gone very, very far. And I think so, especially in the context of COVID, and when so many people were out of jobs for almost 2 years. And even though the economy there have been so many businesses that have closed and will not reopen. So therefore, there's so many people still out of work. Again, it comes down, Rich, to what is the government's vision for the country? When you have a vision for the country, it then allows you to prioritize. And whilst national security is extremely important, and you cannot put a monetary value on the value of life, basic necessities such as food, water, shelter is just as important. And therefore, it's the prioritizing which will then say, this is the amount of money that we have. This is how we're going to spend it. Putting all this money into one avenue is not going to benefit as many people if it had been allocated otherwise. And I agree with that. So whilst crime is a very, very, very big issue, and in no way do I want to diminish that, but something has to be done in terms of the economy. And when you say to a country as a government that you have no money, and people are suffering and they're feeling it, there are people who are choosing whether to eat or pay rent, not knowing what to do. with themselves. It's causing all kinds of additional problems, as we have seen, in terms of mental health issues. So $1.6 billion, and you must forgive me, I thought you said million. $1.6 billion is a lot of money, which, especially at this time, when there's so many people on the breadline, there's so many people, what I guess we can only describe as now the working poor, that need help. We need to kickstart the economy. There must be, again, a vision of how to actually do so. When we look in terms even of food, people cannot say, I'm going to spend a specific amount of money every week, every day, every month on food anymore, because every time you go to the supermarket or to the grocery, things are going up. And therefore, there must be some kind of plan. And I agree with you, $1.6 billion is a lot to simply, as you had put it, catch 20 criminals. I agree. I have to agree with you fully. And I don't think it would be something popular, a decision that would be popular with people who want to actually feel for themselves, how is this going to improve my life? How is this going to make things better? How is this going to help me to get a job, my children, to put food on the table? So yes, that I don't think it's going to be very popular at all. And I have a feeling that most people, if not all, would be as uncomfortable with it as you are. Definitely, definitely. Did you think that there was any justification, let's say, that could ever, anything that could justify, any reason, let's put it that way, that could justify that amount of money at all?
No, I have spun that, Mickela, over and over. I tell you, if it was $50 million, I would have felt that, well, the government has to do something. They have this huge burden over them, to protect the citizens of the country. And therefore, you can't allow it to be business as usual, where people just use their phone, intercept people, murder them, in cold blood, like a lady I saw died in South. I wouldn't know anything about it, surrounding it, but she didn't look like somebody in crime to me, although they would say you don't know how a criminal look these days. But she looked, and what you heard from the community, to be such a peaceful woman, now driving out of her community, somebody pulled up and shot her in cold blood from point blank range and took off and left her there. So I'm saying the government has to respond to that. The government has a duty of care to the people, and therefore they must respond to that. They have a responsibility, people who elected them to office, so that the people of the country could feel safe. So I get that. But to spend $1.6 billion on a software system to respond to crime, that is highly unacceptable. When that same money could have done so many other things to help so many other people who have suffered, I should say, in unimaginable ways during the COVID, and now trying to, some are so dislocated that now that it appears as though we may be coming out of the COVID impact, that it would take them a long, long while to recover. That 1.6 billion, a portion of it could have helped those people. So I couldn't see a software system, given the financial state of the country, could have been that hugely important and so high up on the list of priorities to be something to apply that type of funding behind at this time. I say perhaps 20, 50 million, not that kind of money.
And not only that, there's still people who have not received their grants. There's still people who, the elderly, the more vulnerable in society, who need that help. That is a lot of money to spend. Where
a lot of money.
You're taking almost a risk. There is no guarantee, as you had said before, that you will see the results. And I agree with you. Is it therefore the time to be taking that kind of risk? When you do something like that, and then in the next breath, you tell people you have no money, therefore you're going to implement the property tax, for example. How can you justify that? Taxpayers have to pay the brunt of it at all times. And therefore, I agree, it cannot be justified, given one, the state of the economy, but given how many people in this country, regardless of where you live, are suffering economically. So many people that are without jobs, with no hope for jobs, young people, similarly. So I don't know how they're going to justify it, but I don't think that it is going to be something that people will be able to agree upon when you get up in the morning and you have nothing to eat, or you can't afford to feed your children, you're getting put out by your landlord, and all these different things. There's no investment. Perhaps that money could have been used for investment. Perhaps that money could have been used, as we talk all the time about diversification, looking into, and I'm just saying, for example, into agriculture, in terms of lowering food prices, and just trying to do something, because your job, whilst it is to provide security for the people of your country, it is also supposed to improve their lives, make things better for them. And that expenditure, to me, doesn't create hope. That expenditure does not create certainty. That expenditure does not give people a sense of security. And as you very well said, I don't even think after it was spent, and yes, I'd like to judge it and say, do you feel safer? Will you feel safer by simply using software to intercept criminals' phones? It's not enough. It's definitely not enough. Yeah, and I don't know how they would. I don't know how they would justify it. We see gas prices going up. That's an additional expense for people. We're looking at so many different. It just seems every day things are becoming more and more difficult financially for people, and for a government to get up and make that a priority is wrong. It's wrong. And like I say, how can you explain that to the average person in Trinidad and Tobago? I just don't know. I don't know. And then again, as we said at the beginning, what will be the likelihood of success? As you said, Rich, you said, if you catch 20 criminals or 100 criminals, is it going to act as a preventative measure? No, I don't. I mean, what are these phones called? People have what you call burner phones and all kinds of different things. The criminals seem to be way ahead of us on this. It just seems to almost be an action that was dispassionate to how people are feeling, and a disconnect to what people throughout the country, regardless of which party you support, how you're feeling. I don't know what you're hearing on the ground, how people are feeling. Are people in agreement? I know what I can say on a personal level. The answer is no.
On the ground, most people are as we are on this issue. While they understand that the government had to do something, but the cost was way too much. The government cannot today guarantee anybody having purchased that their sense of security is greater.
Yeah.
And they can't guarantee it now. They won't be able to guarantee it by the end of the year, nor during next year. So right there alone, it has not made any impact at all on people's confidence in the security system of the country. It doesn't make anyone feel more safe. It doesn't. So right there alone, you have people still uneasy, still very much concerned, and that uneasy feeling or the concerns about criminal activities in your community, that would not leave now. It might only get worse. And I'm saying that to say that is why that expenditure could not have been a top priority at this time. I view it as a waste of taxpayers' money. At this time, this summer, some would want to argue in a simplistic way that how much you'll put on a life. I'll put anything imaginable or unimaginable on a life, but I had to look at both lives. The one who could be saved through this measure, and also I have to look at those who, if this money was put into a new industry, a new sector, and the government really drove it, you could get so many young people who graduating from school now, university, into that sector where they could start to make money and make something of themselves and look to start their families and help to ensure the country of continuity in the future and better quality citizens in the future in terms of independence, self-development, skills, and that type of thing. What was spent there had nothing to do with any of that. Tomorrow, you would hear people still committing crime. Next month, and I mean that will happen all over the world. I'm talking about the level of crime in the country, the amount of crime in the country. If this makes a dent, it will be the type of dent that no one would feel or see. And again, that would be to epitomize the senselessness in spending so much money. My issue is the amount spent. Way too much. It's better if we had go and negotiate and shop around and see if we could get a system close to that one for less. It was too much.
And this is what happens all the time. And it comes back to waste and mismanagement. If the government...
This was a clear example of waste. This was huge wastage, yeah.
Waste and mismanagement at a time where there is limited funds, at a time when the government is an extreme amount of debt. And again, people are not going to wake up and say that they feel so much more secure. It's a lot of money that could have been used to improve people's lives. There's so many young people right now coming out of university, those coming out of high school. They have no opportunities. And it's the government's job to create opportunities, job opportunities for people. Young people are not in a position where they can say they can own a vehicle. They could look towards saving to get a home because there are no jobs. So economic security is just as important as personal security, and the money could have been spent in a better way. But it comes down to prioritizing, and the problem that Trinidad and Tobago continues to face of waste and mismanagement. In some cases, corruption, but waste and mismanagement. And you cannot justify that amount of money to a population of only 1.3, 1.4 million people. You're wasting the taxpayers' money and their lives are not improving. And they don't see any future and they don't see any hope. And I would have hoped that seeing the devastation that COVID had caused, that those 2 years would have allowed the government to sit down and reevaluate. Because you had to change what was the priority of what was important, and now look to see how we're going to get our country and our citizens out of the dire straits in which they find themselves. And therefore, you have an entire government to sit down, to speak to the different ministries, to look at social welfare, to look at labor, to look at all of the different issues and reevaluate your plan, reprioritize your plan of what needs to happen. We just cannot pretend 2 years of COVID, which is still there, but those 2 years of dire hardship did not happen. We could have looked at some kind of investment in technology to make people's lives easier. People, after COVID, you see so many people using technology to advance, to make things better, to get rid of the bureaucracy that we face on every day. I mean, the amount of things that could have been done. And I feel that money cannot be justified because you have taken all of it and put it into one basket. Sorry, by there.
No, you're right. They put it into one basket, and that one basket is highly inadequate to take care of the real needs of the people in the country. So
exactly, look at the roads, for example. Something as simple, my friend. Roads, there's still people without water. Basic necessities of life. Basic necessities of life. And it has become, it is almost as if they don't have a plan. And I wanted to just go back into where you said shop around. Every individual will do that. If you go to buy a pair of shoes and you see that these shoes, this shoes is important, you want to buy these shoes, and you see it for $100, you don't just pull out your $100 and buy the shoes. You shop around because you can probably get a better deal elsewhere. So the urgency in which and the rush in which it sort of happened, that in itself cannot be justified, given there are so many more important things that need to be done. No, and that's why people don't trust. And that's why the trust and becomes even more lost. This isn't a matter of which party you support. We all know, I look at a government as the way that you would run a family. Just don't go into a shop. You just don't pick up something and buy it. You don't shop around. It's not the government's money to spend. That is taxpayers' money. And therefore, again, we go back to there must be some kind of accountability for that money. That is, we as Trinbagonians didn't have a say in that. We didn't have a say in that, but you have to be accountable for why you would make, especially now, that kind of decision to spend that amount of money. And I think people don't know because the word billion is thrown about so lackadaisically out like it's nothing. That's a lot of money. That's 100, that's 1,000 million. That's a lot of money. What that could have done for every citizen could have felt some degree of benefit.
Well, actually, this figure would have been 1,600 million.
1,600 million.
Yeah, because 1.6, not just 1 billion.
Oh yes, 1.6, forgive me. Yeah. No, what I was saying is the billion, people don't always, because we use it, I'm giving 1 billion to that, 2 billion to that. The amount of money that was spent, 1.6 billion, that is almost the entire allocation for some ministries.
Yeah.
For a year. In the budget I'm speaking about.
No, of course.
That is almost an entire year's allocation to a ministry from the budget in one swoop.
Some ministry got only $200 million, right? And you spend $1.6 billion just like that out of the clear blue sky on one piece of software device. I mean, this is, let me don't interrupt your thought, Mickela, you go on.
No. I was saying to you that when you look at ministries and you look at allocations, and we always say that, ministries need more, local government needs more, agriculture needs more, education needs more. And then you look at the budget allocation. Again, when I said 1.6 billion, it almost seems, when you think of it in terms of the amount of money, unimaginable for one piece of software, for one. How can that possibly ever be justified? And I don't think it can. I really don't think it can, and it can't even stop crime. It won't stop it. It won't prevent it. One of the things I was looking at is, why didn't they, instead of spending all of this amount of money on a piece of software, didn't we look at developing the DNA banks? Testing for DNA. Up to this day, and I have tried to find out so many times, what is the current status? In 2009, I would have mentioned it to you in our last conversation. In 2009, I was there in the parliament. I voted with the then government to pass the DNA Act. That's 2009. How has DNA been used to solve crime in this country of all types? I'm not just speaking of murder. I'm speaking about rape. I'm speaking about burglary, all types of crime. What is the current status? We don't have a DNA data bank. What is our testing capabilities? Do we have a lab? What about storage? Are we training people to work? What is the situation? Surely we know at the minimum what can detect crime and would be a better investment would be in DNA, using DNA to solve crime. I would think, I don't know what you think, as opposed to one piece of equipment which simply listens in or intercepts phone calls. We are in 2022, and up to now, DNA isn't being used in the way that it should be, and to its fullest capability to solve crime in this country. And that is so important. I mean, you're still doing fingerprint testing, fingerprinting people, and when we have the legislation in place, but you do not have the machinery in place. So when you put it in context of all that needs to be done and all that can be done, besides simply intercepting a phone call, it feels even worse. It seems even more of a waste of money. I don't know what you think.
No, I agree with you fully. When you consider, Mickela, look at that line of reasoning alone. When you consider what has happened in the judiciary to help respond to those who are charged faster, to help the judiciary. If you're really looking to deal with crime, to me, the best way to deal with crime would be to have people brought to justice, or at least those who are brought to justice have their matters heard and concluded faster. That might be a matter for Parliament. It might have been cheaper for the Parliament to go on and enact laws that could have assisted the judiciary in a way that may have persuaded them to legally to try to get trials started and finished faster. That might have been a more plausible way and use of anybody, I think, would have wanted to support such an approach.
Agreed. Another thing, when we talk about looking at the amount of money and expenditure and perhaps how it could have been allocated or spent differently, why are our police stations still not computerized? Something as simple as that. What's happening in Gasparillo, San Fernando doesn't know. We have personal experiences with that. Policemen are still writing reports. A man is out on bail, he gets charged for another or has a warrant out for him, let's say. In Gasparillo, San Fernando doesn't know. Those are things I think that are very, very important. And therefore, when you weigh all of it out, one piece of equipment you cannot justify it. You cannot justify the expenditure. Setting up technology and using technology where the police on the road and the police on the station can communicate effectively. There must be a vision beyond, I'm going to spend $1.6 billion to buy a piece of equipment to listen in. We are also saying that, the listening in, okay, there are going to be lawyers who will be able to go into court and say that that is inadmissible evidence. I'm sure that's going to be a possibility as well. So we seem to not be able to get off the starting blocks, and the government doesn't seem to be able to get off the starting blocks in justifying this amount of money, even within the context of trying to deal with crime. If we take out the situation with the economy and water and roads for a second, even within national security, there's so much more that could be and should be done. So much more that should be done. And therefore, $1.6 billion for one piece of equipment, it really is not going to pay itself off. We know what the situation is. We look at the judiciary. We know that about the backlogs. We know that there are not enough magistrates. We know about what happens in the courts. But nothing, it didn't seem to be a priority. And therefore, one has to ask oneself, what is the government's plan for crime, to deal with crime? What is their plan to deal with crime? Is it simply limited to buying a piece of spying equipment? If that is the case, we are in deep, deep trouble.
Oh, deep trouble indeed. You remember a wonderful couple committed suicide the other day?
Yes.
And then cited, economic challenges as the basis for that act of taking their own lives. What could have been used as a stronger example to inform the government that the $1.6 billion that they had could have been utilized in many different ways? Those people didn't commit suicide because they felt the level of crime was too high in the country. They committed suicide, which in and of itself is a crime. They did that because they wanted out. The situation is too challenging, it's too tough, it's too hard. That $1.6 billion could have been better used to make things easier for so many more people in the country. But in the face of that information and evidence, they saw it fit to run to say they could justify such an expenditure. They have not justified it to me, and I don't know what they could do to make me feel it was the correct thing to do. I see that as an abusive approach to utilizing taxpayers' money, and to me it's hugely concerning. I'm extremely disappointed, not in getting the software, but the amount that was paid for it. That is my contention. That is my disappointment. Too many other things were ahead of that in this country that could have benefited the people of this country to take that money and go in that direction.
It shows a lack of compassion. It shows a disconnect. It shows and feels almost like a slap in the face. And I would hope it is not that, but equally, I would hope it is not that they don't know what they're doing. I hope it is neither. But I cannot think of how they could possibly justify it. There is no citizen that would be able to think of how they could justify it. And what happens is there will be no accountability. There will be no transparency. And it will go on and on and on and on, I guess, until an election where people will say that they're fed up and vote the ruling party out, perhaps. But I think that lack of humanity almost, and understanding and compassion for what people are going through. It is your job as a politician to understand that you live in the country, you see what is happening. It's reported in the newspapers that we all read. And through all of that, a group of leaders sat together, administrators, and made that decision without blinking an eye. It's not acceptable. It is not acceptable at all. Unfortunately, people again will just continue to feel helpless and continue to feel we just have to accept it. Governments have to stop treating taxpayers' money as if it's their own. Would they treat within their own families like that? Would they make that kind of decision to spend that amount of money in such a willy-nilly fashion without second thought, not knowing if there would be any returns at all? Which logical person, company, or business would do that? But again, it comes down to a complete and utter disregard for the population.
And as you
it
said,
hurts more.
They will never spend their own personal money in such a way. Never. Unheard of. Forget that. And if you know you won't spend your money in such a way, then why spend taxpayers' money in such a way? That should be your guide. You said just now, people are going to head in the courts, right? And challenge whatever is before the court. Attorneys going to go there and challenge that to talk about how they gathered the information. And even if you have the law to support it, it doesn't prevent an attorney from challenging it. And some people are going to get away through that system. And therefore, that will render the software work to be invalid.
Richard, I need to interject.
Lady and my friend.
Mickela and Richard, we need to go
the
to
news.
We're past. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Mickela will come back after the news.
Yeah.
Sure. I'm here.
Okay, good. Stick and stay, folks. We continue after the news.
Power 102 Digital.
Yeah.
We sound like home. Power 102 Digital. Streaming 24/7 on power102fm.com and on the Power 102 Digital app. Power 102 Digital. This is your news bulletin from Power 102 Digital.
With your news here on Power 102, I'm Sparkle McIntosh. Good afternoon. Motorists are being put on notice that police officers will be out in full force during the Easter holiday period. Speaking at the TTPS media briefing today, Senior Superintendent Wayne Meister of the Traffic and Highway Patrol Branch urged motorists to exercise caution on the nation's roads over the long weekend. Senior Superintendent Meister said there will be special emphasis on the offense of driving under the influence of alcohol and speed enforcement. Additionally, it was revealed that the Traffic and Highway Patrol Branch has noticed a high level of reckless and inconsiderate driving since the lifting of COVID-19 restrictions. Senior Superintendent Meister said road traffic deaths have increased by 29% in 2022, with 31 fatalities for the year thus far, compared to 24 for the same period last year. Road Safety Coordinator Sergeant Brent Batson added that police have noted a pattern amongst drivers where they follow too closely behind other vehicles. He advised that at a speed limit of 100 kilometers per hour on the highway, drivers should be 5 car lengths away from each other. The American Chamber of Commerce of Trinidad and Tobago says it remains committed to enhancing trade and export promotion opportunities to benefit local businesses and ensure TNT's economic recovery and stability from the pandemic. AmCham TT CEO Nirad Tawari says TNT continues to be a prime investment destination for multinational companies to conduct business. The United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization UNESCO, the CARICOM Secretariat and the University of the West Indies have joined forces to implement a project titled Creative Caribbean, an ecosystem of play for growth and development in the amount of €3 million. The 3-year project that will be implemented in 15 Caribbean countries aims to develop a robust community of creatives for economic growth in the region by strengthening and enabling an environment and providing grant support for industry and training initiatives. A Russian warship that was damaged by an explosion on Wednesday has sunk, Russia's defense ministry has said. Ukraine claims it struck the warship with its missiles, but Russia has made no mention of an attack. According to a ministry message, Moskva, the flagship of Russia's Black Sea Fleet, was being towed to port when stormy seas caused it to sink. The 510-crew vessel was an important symbolic and military target and has led Russia's naval assault on Ukraine. I'm Sparkle McIntosh, and those were some of the stories making the news to this time here on Power 102.
Up to date and credible. Power 102 Digital. The Afternoon Power Drive. Weekdays from 4 p.m. on Power 102 Digital. Escape the city and conduct your meetings and business activities at the Cascadia. Our modern conference rooms are the ideal space to facilitate innovative and productive meetings. Corporate packages include spacious conference rooms, Wi-Fi, food and drinks, and meeting equipment. The way we conduct business is changing, and we at Cascadia understand your changing business needs. Contact us to discuss your package. 623-3518 or 798-5730 or email marketing@cascadiahotel.com.
Well, thank you, Paul. We'll continue inside hour number 2 with Mickela Panday and Richard Noray. Richard?
Yeah, Daddy Mac?
Yes, my brother.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm in a different place now, so I put on my camera.
All right.
And I have better internet this time.
Good. Great.
So
Sounds good. Nice and
good. Yeah. I don't know if we would get to see Mickela today. But we are streaming online.
Yeah.
And we on YouTube. Yeah. Oh, come on. You can't keep that beauty hidden, Mickela. There it is. There it is. Yeah,
you're a charmer. You're a sweet talker. You're a sweet talker. You're a sweet talker.
No. I'm someone who likes to speak the truth.
But that's good.
Daddy Mac, isn't she wonderful? Daddy Mac? Isn't she wonderful? Isn't she lovely?
Oh, she's heavenly beautiful, man.
Well, I hope you are not accused of being a charmer too. Yeah. We only speak the truth.
Yeah, we speak the truth. It's the truth.
All right.
Rich, on this topic, I wanted here until 5:30, but I really wanted to ask you this. And I'm sure that the listeners would be interested as well. What are your views on this Edmund Marshalls and Mahon, the UK firm that has been an investigative firm? I think they comprise solicitors and barristers to do investigations into possible fraud and money laundering. I think they said EMBD, Live Sport, and EFCL. That must be costing quite a bit as well. Perhaps a little bit more necessary, I don't know, than the 1.6 billion. But that is something that is also happening now. I don't know what your views are on that.
Well, my views on that would be to go back to a little history. To me, I see some of it, with all honesty now. We have to fight crime, whatever shape it takes, whatever form. We have to fight crime. But you can't suddenly become knowledgeable about what you need to know every time you're about to enter into an election. It doesn't look good. The optics is bad. When in 2015, we heard about people were going to be charged and so many people going to jail. I'm sure you heard that. I mean, it was big hit songs. And right after the election, you heard in January 2016, well, this is the cabinet. We don't investigate. We don't do those things. After all that was said on the platform, this is the cabinet. As you know, that's what we are being told. So now they're telling us we know it. But when you were telling us what you're going to do, you didn't remember that you were aiming to go in the cabinet. But now in the cabinet, they're saying to us, as you know, we are the cabinet. So we don't investigate these things. We don't do these things at all. But here what was said in January 2016, Astra Javid, you know that person?
Yes, she's a reporter, yes.
Right. She did a piece in the papers. And you had a senior politician in the cabinet, telling the country on a platform in 2016, you know, January of 2016, about 4 months after the election, they hoped that the police would read the work by Astra Javid and charges would flow from it. So Astra Javid became the super investigator in this country. All the police needed to do was read it and go on hand and arrest people. I mean, when I saw that, I said, no, this can't be right. And then the idea about criminals and who going to jail died down until we ran into the local elections. And then in there, you hear local government reform and people going to jail again. When the local election came and left, this is history given here. When that came and went, the reform fell away. No more talk about reform. And the talk about people going to jail and so on, that died away too. Then just to fast forward, we reach a general election in 2020. The issues that were on the table heading into 2015 election, they resurfaced. EMBD, live sport, this, that, the other. So it was the same message since 2013 that I heard all the way up to 2020. And Daddy Macitel, we were here saying we're not listening anymore because we got the point. How much time you listen to the same song? We heard it over and over and over. And now that we are approaching another election, right now, you hear the question you asked me about these people coming here. These are investigators, we have been told, who were working on this matter for quite some time, these matters, for quite some time. Now they went cold and quiet for the longest while. All of a sudden, we are approaching another election, they're coming in. So we think will be on the platform now. This one who talking, he talking so because he's afraid he going to jail, and this one, the same thing. All they have done is created a new avenue to talk, to give the same message. I want to say here today, unequivocally, people may be charged and people may end up in jail. I don't believe it. You can't give me the same.
I don't think anybody believes that. I don't think anybody.
Right. It is not drawing a crowd. It's not taking the traction because we heard it over and over. So for me, those people coming in here, the only part that concerns me is after the election, when we hear the bell, nobody will be charged. When you hear the bell to bring them here. And the next thing is, you hear they're coming, right? I can't remember they ever said they actually reach.
I don't know. And how much it's costing. My thing is, I feel the exact same way. And you took the words out of my mouth. This has actually been happening. So, Mr. Manning, I want to go a little bit further back than where you started. When the early election in 2010 was called, that was also on the campaign. So from 2010, we're looking at. We then look at 2015. We then look at 2020. And it's the same thing over and over. It's either you have something or you have nothing. Are you saying they are coming in now in 2022 to investigate? Is that what it is?
Between 2010 and 15.
That what's happened? Because allegations were made about the former government. And then allegations. So once you get into government, you forget. So your campaign is only about corruption and what you're going to do and who is going to be held accountable, but nothing ever comes to fruition. Number one, maybe talk about issues instead. I think maybe people would be more willing to listen, because I don't think anybody's buying it. We continuously hear about EMBD. Continuously. Live sport lasted for 2 years. It ended in 2014. And I wrote something here to Mrs. Bisasa called in the police to investigate allegations of massive corruption involving millions of dollars in the live sport program, which was supposed to target young unemployed youths to move away from crime. You find out now that there was an audit done by the Ministry of Finance. And these are the words that was used, 2014. and I'm only putting it into context because we're in 2022. The audit had revealed several discrepancies, including procurement breaches, the involvement of some persons in criminal activities, fraud by suppliers, theft of equipment, breaches of the Proceeds of Crime Act, and a deviation from the mandate of cabinet. An educator was paid $34 million for no work. This is something, and I only repeat it, that was known through a financial audit by the Ministry of Finance that was done in 2014. You're bringing in Edmonds, Marshall, and McCann to do what? I don't know. However, if it is something that will help, by all means, if it is something that will lead to accountability, by all means. But this is not something we don't know. Is it that there is no evidence? Well, if there's no evidence, you need to stop saying it.
And if you have new evidence to add to what you have already, then say so. I haven't heard anything new to say, well, they got new evidence for this and for that and the other, etc. And as a result, the people are coming to re-examine these things along with the new evidence. But that's different. All I hear they're coming back.
Triggered it.
Yeah.
What triggered it?
What triggered it this time? Well, I'll tell you. The upcoming elections. That is what triggered it. The upcoming elections. And to me, you cannot, when we do our shows here, Daddy Mac will tell you, we try to inform our listeners to know what they need to know as they process out things. So that they must know, listen, I heard this before. It went nowhere. I believed in it. I followed it. Nothing happened. That informs me that the probability now is quite high that nothing would result from it now. So I'm not paying attention to that. So that people would know how you use the information. It's not about the government. The government, you can't fault them for doing it, you know. Because if every time you throw the same song out, you get the same reaction from the crowd, well, they'll keep on throwing out that same song until the reaction changes. So for me, I'm talking to the people who could say, listen, I've heard that before, so I ain't dancing to it anymore. That's where you need to move people, our listeners, to that place. You're doing something, do something new. Show how the people could benefit from this. If you can't do that, you have the choice to also say so, but the politician would never say, well, they had no answer. They have to make us believe they have an answer. But to me, this is now a campaign based on propaganda. And it is possible that the other elections were fought and won on the basis of propaganda, meaning you were saying you were going to do stuff that you knew you weren't going to do. And with that knowledge, you did it to get the votes. Haven't gotten the votes, you did nothing thereafter. So to
and had no intention?
None whatsoever. So coming back with it now is no accident. It's a successful record. It's a hit tune. And the DJ intends to play it again. But to me, on this occasion, the DJ should get minimal reaction from the crowd on this occasion. Yeah.
The crowd should walk out.
But that too, to me, would be, you show up to hear new music, you ain't getting here, realize it's the same thing you heard before, then the return on your dollar is not a good one. Don't let it cost you more to stay in that pub or that fete for the whole night to be able to know what is coming next, and you could predetermine with clinical accuracy. You may as well go home and utilize your time better. Yes. What kind of enjoyment you can have showing up to something and everything they're about to say, you know what they're going to say, and you know how it will end up too. Well, where's the excitement in that? So it just doesn't make sense.
And it will continue to happen until people themselves ask, what? Nobody asks the question, why hasn't anything been done? If you knew something, because sometimes, and I remember it because I listened to the platforms and the different meetings, and it's the same thing being said by both. It is the same thing being said by both. What the other one did while they were in government, which is why you should vote them out. Waste and corruption. And the same thing happens when they go in there. And then, well, we couldn't do anything about it. So the question now has to be asked, what do you intend to do about it? oh, we will put so-and-so in jail and we'll put this and we'll put that and we'll do that. Then you say, I said, all right. Well, it's not us to investigate, it's the police. And then the police must also take that report to the DPP. And then it is the DPP who decides whether to charge or not. Is the problem there? Is there too much, we hear that the DPP is understaffed. Is it that consistently? Is it that the problem is there? Is it that there is no information? Is it that that they are now gathering information? But to me, my own personal feeling as a Trinbagonian is that it has become sickening. I don't want to hear about what they did with EMBD. I don't want to hear, I've heard it. What's happened with live sports? It was there for 2 years. It was $400 million. There was gang and criminal activity. I don't want to hear about EFCL. Now we're hearing that EFCL is being wound up because they're in so much debt and it's at the taxpayers' expense. How are they then now going to pay all debts that EFCL owes? Is it now going to be the taxpayer once again to come in and do that? What is going to be different if you're selling something to the public? Edmonds Marshall and McCon, this UK firm of investigators are coming. If you're selling that to the public, to do what? These are things that we know in Parliament. These are things that have been said in Parliament. These are things that have been said on the political platforms. If you know, and I'm not saying that it is for the government to do anything, that's not their job. Then it could be seen as political persecution. Take your information to the police. Surely it is then for the police to decide and to investigate. Have any investigations, genuine investigations taken place? If so, have reports been sent to the DPP? At least before you spend more taxpayers' money, you should tell us at what state we're at. Where we're in, what has happened since the allegations were first made.
And even when they tell you take something to the police, right? Even when they reach that point to take something to the police, you cannot take everything to the police just like that. You could say, look, for example, you heard about the land grabbing and all these things. I don't know if we chatted on this the other day. But with all land grabbing arrangements, you can't just simply say, all right, if you have evidence on land grabbing, take it to the police. As a government, you have to be able, land grabbing probably has about, how much? 30,000 people trying to steal land all over the country. So you would just tell everybody that you here involved in it, take it to the police. The police doesn't have the human resource to pursue all those people. The courthouses don't have the capacity to respond to all those people. So the police can't catch them. You don't have investigators to adequately pursue it. So what do you do as a government? You go to Parliament and come up with some law that would make it illegal and address squatting if necessary, or come up with or adverse possessors. You come up with something. Your job in Parliament does not begin and end by telling people take something to the police. There are some things you would say take to the police. If you hear somebody rob somebody and you have an idea who it is, take that to the police. But you hear people grabbing land. This is part of the national security. The land is for everybody in the country. Is supposed to get land legally. The government has a duty to protect the land and distribute it fairly or equitably. But you hearing about land grabbing, carry to the police, and you think you have executed your responsibility. Well, if that is the case, the easiest job in this country is to lead the cabinet.
Yeah, but clearly it looks so.
Yeah.
It looks so. But in terms of money laundering and fraud and allegations that have been made, you have heard, we have all heard as citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. I know this because I saw it. And there's these documents. And look, they documented here. It has this, it has that. We have heard it. Take good evidence to the police. Do you have any evidence? Or are you simply...
That was an accident.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. That remarks something probably. It happens sometimes.
Not a problem at all. But in terms of evidence, or it's either you don't have any evidence, but if you have the evidence, you have seen governments come, they've changed. 2010, 2015. So you know that you would have had, governments would have had better than the police or any average citizen, information. If you're making these kind of allegations, you will assume that they have had information. There's supposed to be a process of accountability in all that we do through auditing. Is it that you came into government and saw what was happening and realized, well, listen, these numbers are not adding up. Therefore, something is wrong here. If, again, I always go back, if it happened within a company, what would happen? What would be the redress? What would be the redress? We see money missing. We say, okay, we talk to the people. So we realize, listen, this guy has probably been dabbling a little bit in some wrong things. Well, here's what, I've got this information. I take it to the police. Why continuously say the same thing over and over and then tell us you cannot, there's all this corruption going on, and then tell us, well, it's not for you to investigate, it's for the police. But you speak from a position as if you know.
Yeah.
So clearly, if this is the case, we don't have any corruption, we don't have any waste, we don't have any mismanagement. Police can't go of their own will and volition to dig up. And that is why, if it comes again, I'm not listening to it. I'm not listening to it. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it this time. And I'm going to stick with you on this one, Rich, and say, I agree with you. I don't think anything is going to happen. I think, and I could be wrong, but sometimes there may be the right will to do something, but when you get in there, maybe some people want to do the same thing. And perhaps that in itself acts as a deterrent to not stir things up so nobody will be looking at you. Maybe that is a reason. But I can't understand if it is your duty to protect the treasury, use people's money properly, make sure people's monies have not been misused, that it hasn't been wasted. And if you have this information, that you will not take it to the police for them to do their investigation. And years will pass, and now I'm hearing EMBD, live sport. 2014, like I say, you can go and anywhere, you can go into the Hansard, you can go back onto the internet and you'll see what they say. It's the same exact thing. Different day, different khaki pants. That's my view. So, but you're spending money. I'd like to know, how much money are these UK investigators being paid? How much are they being paid? And what exactly is their role? What it is they're coming to for the first time to do investigation into allegations of money laundering and fraud.
They're saying that they're coming back, which means
yes, they're coming back. Now we always have to be fair, as we have been. They say they were not here because of COVID. I don't know when last they were here, but because of COVID and the borders were closed and all of this, so they are now coming back to resume. I don't know how long they were here before. I don't know if they were there before. I don't know how far they got in the investigation before. I don't know if they're restarting. We don't know anything. COVID
came here March 2020.
Yeah.
That was in the election year.
Yeah.
Right? This thing really started and was placed under the radar. When I say the radar was placed on it, between 2015 and 2020, not so? That's the time that was placed on live sport. They said now they couldn't come back because of COVID. So if you started investigating this late 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19, you only decided that you wanted to come back when it had COVID and it couldn't come for 2 years. What were you investigating in England? How long it takes them to conclude a matter? How long? Not that long. Investigators, not that long. In China, it's 1 day. They try you the same day in China. So they left for 5 years. And now you're returning on the heels of an election to tell us what? Here was the big news I think will come out of this. We may see the media will pick up when they arrive. Now, it don't have to be in the investigators, and it could be some people looking like British people, white people, coming off of the plane and tell them these are the people investigators, and then they make a U-turn and leave, Because the camera will never be placed on them after to see if they're going in the police station, if they're dealing with a file, what is written on the file. You know what I mean? Like if they're saying it's EMBD, live sport, you wouldn't see that. And they may make a U-turn and leave, but the optics would have been just to inform us that investigators are here. And people get mount platforms and talk forever about it because they know the country saw. And then we'll hear, you all saw the investigators coming? Aha. Well, they're investigating them, you know, and so on and so on and so on. But the investigators probably left already, you know. We will never know. The papers wouldn't know, the media wouldn't know, they leave quietly. Big media press conference when they come. But as soon as the cameras come off of them, they may leave the country the following day, 2 days after, but the country will be none the wiser. But the politicians now could run wild to make people feel the investigators are here, something happening. And that remains a conversation until the last ballot is counted. And when that ballot is everything done. Nobody hearing anything about investigators again, nothing, until they run into 2025. And
it'll come back again. And if you ask, so what happened to the report when the British people came down? Oh, well, we can't disclose that report because that report is a confidential report that now needs to go to the police. So now it's in the police. Well, the police were supposed to do this, but what happens is, now it is by the DPP. And the DPP right now is extremely overwhelmed by the amount of work and understaffed and underfunded, and it'll go quiet and then it'll come back again, as you have said, in 2025. And it becomes so sickening, because if there is, and I'm saying I have no evidence of anything, if there is evidence of corruption, fraud, money laundering, those are serious crimes. If there is evidence of that, don't you think it's important to put some kind to prioritize that and ensure that the job is done? And that the people are able to see that their money has been well spent, and that justice can actually prevail, and that there are not rules for some and different rules for others, that allegedly politicians can come and go regardless of which party and never have to be accountable. As soon as you leave office, you have no responsibility any longer for what you did when you were there. Is that what we are saying? Because if we are telling people that, are we surprised that people break the law and have no regard for the law? It all comes full circle.
Yeah.
And it's sad, because who doesn't believe that there are rules for some and another rule for the others? Who doesn't believe that if they go and they pick up something from the supermarket without paying for it, what's going to happen to them? Somebody credit card fraud and all these things. You know, the rules are different for the citizens. If there is waste, corruption, and mismanagement, fraud, money laundering, no one has had to pay for it. So why are you going to bring it up to talk again about the same thing? That is one trap that I don't, sorry, my dear.
No, you go on.
I said that is one trap that I don't intend to fall in myself. Like I said, talk about issues. If you know to yourself nothing is going to happen as the government or the opposition, I mean, entire campaigns, it becomes sickening to listen to politicians on the hustings. But one issue of how you're going to deal with something in a realistic way. But comments about who thief and who have a 10 house and who buy how much Range Rover and who did this and who have the bank account here and there. And it's the same conversation that's going to happen again. I am hoping that people are going to want to hear something different.
If you hire someone to investigate a matter for you, a private investigator, something concerns you and you need a private investigator, you hire this person and he tell you in a year's time, he would finalize it. And at the end of the year, he comes and tells you, hey, I need some more time. And you say, how much more time? He said, give me 2 more years. And you decide to agree. And at the end of the 2 years, he come and tell you, I need 2 more years. And beyond any reasonable man's imagination, you give him an additional 2 years. And at the end of that 2 years, he came in the action for 2 more years. And again, shockingly, you decide, take 2 more years. If he comes back again, you'll consider him?
Never. Never.
It's 7 years.
Would you pay him?
Oh, no. Only the down payment he got in the first year.
And I would want a refund.
I might want a refund, yes.
I want a refund.
But no more money.
No more money. And not
No
only
more
that,
money.
I fire you.
I
have to
think you're
hire
right.
somebody
After
else.
the 7 years, I might want back my money, and then I might
You want back
commence,
your money.
yes, civil legal proceedings to get damages or on the interest of the money I pay you to.
Correct.
Because you wasted it. You have nothing to tell me. But the only thing you can come to tell me, you need more time. Nothing else is happening, you need more time. Come on. So for me, it's 7 years in office. Enough time to have brought some of these matters to a conclusion?
Of course. And if not, I don't want to hear about it anymore. I don't think anybody wants to hear about it anymore. I think there is not anybody in this country who will not stand up and be able to tell you everything that the government has said before. We know, as citizens, we know. What are you going to do about it? That's what I want to know. What are you?
A plausible conclusion or a plausible exit strategy to just ignore those things and get home with the business of the country and be happy that people seem to have forgotten it? I think that would have been a better strategy, and you just go forward. But you raise these things again, knowing that you were supposed to have addressed them several years ago, and you failed to do so. But you are raising it again, hoping that it takes traction again without realizing it could boomerang on you. And
I personally would have been embarrassed to do that.
Yeah.
I would have been embarrassed because I would not have want anybody to have to ask me that question. That why after 7 years, when you fight this campaign as a corruption buster, that nothing happened. It's embarrassing to sing the same song over and over again. We know. What are you doing about it? And again, I keep on saying, if you don't have information, which I assume you will have given you are the government and you would have known what happened and came before you. If you don't have that information, let it go. Let it go. What are you saving it up for? To do what? To just have something to talk about before every election? Is that it? To talk about what the other person did before you? Let there be continuity of something positive instead of the same old nonsense. But we'll have to wait and see, and I think you're right.
Yeah. Local government reform, for example, point, not the issue of that. But we were told local government failed the reform they wanted last time because there was a joint select committee. And several persons from the opposition party failed to support it. And that is why it was not implemented, right? That's what we were told. Mm-hmm. But on this occasion, we are being told, right after he said that, he said now, well, on this occasion, we had the majority and we will pass it. So they didn't have the majority between 2060.
I mean, it's a little bit.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Now.
And that the minister of local government now will go to all corporations and make the case to get support. And so this time it will pass. It is that you sit down, you have a piece of paper, so 3 people didn't pass it, right? I'm making a note of that. So that when local election come now, I'm going to raise that as an issue to say, we weren't able to do it because they didn't support it. You said that about 55 minutes ago. But 55 minutes later, you're telling the same audience, well, this time we had the majority, we will do it. And you have to wonder, so when you tell us all that you told us 55 minutes ago, you didn't realize you had the majority. In fact, you had a bigger majority because your majority is slimmer now. So which means you could have more than overwhelmingly passed it. And the reason it wasn't passed is because you decided not to pass it.
Exactly.
You understand? And you wouldn't take the platform and level with the people. That's what is required. That's what you call
blame. I don't have a problem if you blame. But what you're doing about it, okay, so I do have a problem with blaming. What I have a problem with is that if you have something that you know that the other side didn't do, what are you going to do about it when you're there? You have the majority, so let's not even have that discussion because you are the government. That's why you won.
Yeah.
So please don't take people for fools. We're not talking about a constitutional majority, which is needed, which is a different thing. This is, you're looking for a simple majority where you're saying you have the majority in order to pass it. You don't really want local government reform. That's what it comes down to. You don't really want campaign financing reform. You don't want it. You don't want it. And if that is the case, stop fooling people.
The government
it has become painful.
When a government wants to pass something, they pass it. If they have to
overnight,
it only needs a simple majority, they will do it. They will dismantle it and bring it back in pieces and get it passed. So when they didn't pass something, the citizens of this country today are supposed to know that that was not passed, not because it didn't get the support. And when the opposition doesn't support something, nothing is wrong with that, in the context that you can't expect to give any opposition something that you want to do and expect them to support it just as you presented
and just
it.
Blindly, because you said
it. Going to say what
they're
they do like,
to do that. Yeah.
And you're going to engage in reconciliation and you're going to make your amendments and then you pass something that they believe is more supportive for all the people in the country. But when you bring a bill and you know the opposition won't support it, right away you take platform and say they don't support anything. We in the PNM, I'm a PNM, we don't support anything when we're in the opposition just so either. We raise red flags and say, no, we don't like this, we don't like that, and adjustments are made and then they attract our support. So that when you bring something, it's only natural the other side will say, we don't like C and we don't like J. Remove those two and then we could see. That's how it works.
The opposition's job is to also, they use the word oppose, but I like to look at it in terms of holding the government accountable.
Yeah.
That is their job. They have to hold the government accountable, and therefore they're not expected to support things blindly. That doesn't mean you need to be obstructionist, but at the same time, you don't. It shouldn't even reach there. I mean, I've been in the parliament. You have joint select committees. You sit down, discuss things, speak with each other, find out what you like this way, find out what you don't like this way. But you see, those basic excuses will keep coming and coming. And it will keep being repeated and repeated. And people will say, oh, that's true. If you support the PNM, they will say, that's true. It's really the opposition who's not doing it. The opposition will come. If you support the opposition will say, oh, it's the PNM. They never wanted to do it in the first place. We just asked them for so much and so much changes. I mean, honestly, over and again. And who gets hurt? The people.
And people actually show up and listen and support in election, these types of things,
Yeah.
And that is shocking to us in this country. I know they told us that you have to stay with us till 5:30 only today. We have gone long over that, Mickela.
That's
I want to thank you. I hope you come back on soon. I have a number of issues. I would line them up and we discuss them all as we go forward.
Yes, and I had a great time, Rich. I hope all is well with you. Yeah. And I will see you next week.
Yeah.
Or next date.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. Any closing words?
Yes, I just would like to wish everybody a safe and blessed Easter. And perhaps if I'm allowed to just say, please take a level of personal responsibility in terms of COVID. It is still there. It still exists. And whilst the regulations have been removed, we have to look after ourselves and our families and each other, and have a wonderful and blessed Easter, and see you next week.
Mm-hmm. Anything to those who want to go and swim? We have lost a couple of persons.
Be careful. And I mean, and the drinking and swimming and the drinking and driving, it's been so difficult. Last Easter, we have not been with our families. We haven't seen our families. We haven't been able to go to the beach. We haven't been able to go to each other's houses. And now we get this opportunity. I think we have to take a level of personal responsibility, because what worries me is that COVID is not gone. We don't want, for some reason, to have any kind of spike again and to find the government reacting to it and then us being limited or restricted in some way, whether it be our movement or otherwise. So it's important to just look after ourselves and our families. We have parents, we have children, we have grandparents. This is a wonderful weekend. Enjoy it, but please, when you're out there, be careful.
Thank you so much, Mickela, and you two have a happy and peaceful Easter. Until next week. Thank you,
my friend. Until next week. Okay, bye guys. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes. All right.